French, Italian, Dutch, English. These are just some of the many languages that I have spoken on my multilingual journey. But you read the title right. Welsh might actually be the easiest language I've ever tried to speak. Welcome to Rasputin Lingo. My name is Israel and I've learned many languages with a large variety as well. So when I say Welsh is the easiest one to speak, I'm not BSing you. And wait. If you're all the Anglophones who've had to suffer through Welsh in school, come at me in the comments. Hear me out. I have very real reasons. And spoiler alert, it's hardly about the grammar. But also, come at me in the comments. It's good for engagement. To be fair, yes, part of the ease that I'm feeling has to do with the fact that it's my latest language, so I'm a better and more experienced language learner than I ever was. But the language itself also feels very learner friendly, especially to English speakers. It's almost like it's made to be learned and spoken by Anglophones. And when it comes to specifically speaking a foreign language, I can break it down to pronunciation, expressions, and more importantly, native speaker's attitude. The last one definitely makes or breaks the experience. But first, give the video a like and let's go. The first part needs little explanation. The pronunciation of Welsh is almost entirely consistent. If you learn it, of course. If you don't, then of course it's difficult because you don't know it. And then people complain about it. But if you do learn it, it's really consistent. And it has a surprising amount of overlap with English pronunciation more than, say, Gaelic. All the the, ng sounds may be foreign to people coming from other languages, but not to us. If you see a word, you can pronounce it. Again, if you learn to. Let's look at some easy and cute examples. Rabbit. K, always k. U, that's a funny one. N, I, always I. Ng, e, n. Koningen, koningen. Cow. B, I. That's one of the counterintuitive ones, but nevertheless, still always consistent. U, h, bilch, bilch. Hamster. B, o, always o. H, d, e, w. Bochtel, bochtel. Horse. K, again, always k. E, f, one sound. More on that later. L. Careful. Careful. To think. M, e, th, one sound. U, again. L. Meddle. Meddle. Now another one that may be a bit unintuitive. S, that's a funny sound. U, again. V, that's a V, you gotta get used to it. But, again, consistent. R, G, always a G. I. Sluvergi. Sluvergi. Coward. Now you try. Mugud. Mugud. Mask. Fonio. Fonio. To phone. Chwythu. Chwythu. To blow. Llefydd. Llefydd. Places. Llanfair pwll Gwengrych Gogol Chwndropol Llantysil Gogogoch. You know. The only problem I'd say is with the letter Y, because it's sometimes an sometimes an I, depending on where it is. But on the grand scheme of things, it's like really easy to read. Like once you learn it, it's obvious. Now, words and expressions. Welsh vocabulary has two drastically different sides. One side, the extremely internally consistent Celtic side, and the other one, the English influence side. The first part stems from the fact that Welsh in the past borrowed foreign words less extensively than even, let's say, German did. While this means a lot of the vocabulary is unrecognizable at first glance, that also means that you keep seeing the same roots show up again and again, combining to form new meanings. Sometimes it borrows the logic of foreign words to form new words, but still using the same roots. Prefixes, for example, whenever you see cuv, could, it means together. If you see an, am, ang, same thing, and usually di, it means not. For example, bod means being, to be. Cydfod means being together. Agreement. Anghydfod, not being together. disagreement. Another one, gwybod. Gwy comes from a root that means know, know being, to know. Anwybodus describes someone that does not know, ignorant. Anwybyddu, to not know something intentionally, to ignore. Means self. Wybodol describes someone that is self-knowing, aware, conscious. Anwybodol, not aware, unaware. Even my very own profession, music composition. Let's see, ansawdd means quality or state of something. The action, cyfansoddi, well, there's a slight vowel change there, but it's the same thing. Cyf, together, ansawdd, quality, to put qualities together, to compose. The noun, cyfansoddiad, composition, which is what I do, or constitution. What about the opposite? Dadansoddi. Dad is apart, qualities taken apart. Analyze. And dadansoddiad, you wanna guess? Yeah, that's analysis. Check out my music channel in the link below. A side note when it comes to how the language is constructed is that when it comes to grammar, you get to choose how complex the grammar is. You've got options. Whoa. To quote the great Richard Simcott, it's plug and play. For example, the verb anwybyddu, again, to ignore. I could use the proper literary conjugations and say anwybyddaf, I ignore, I will ignore. Anwybyddais, I ignored. Anwybyddwn, I was ignoring. But when I'm too lazy to learn the conjugations, or when I'm speaking on the fly and I can't find the forms, I could just say dwi'n anwybyddu, I'm ignoring, I ignore. Nes I anwybyddu, I ignored. Ro'n anwybyddu, I was ignoring. And I barely ever have to change the verb itself. So the grammar itself has the options built into it. You don't have to learn the conjugations if you don't want to. Oh, and if you want to watch me learn Welsh live and follow my progress, maybe even hear me speak it, the subscribe button is right there. Now the second half of Welsh is the anglicised part, which is obviously a result of every native Welsh speaker also being a native English speaker nowadays. It means that a lot of vocabulary for modern concepts will be freebies. They're the same as the English ones, down to the diphthongs like teipio, microphone, and to the S's like buses, rases. But more importantly for us, it is widely accepted, you can decide if you like it, to directly translate English phrases and the overall way that an English speaker thinks. That includes common phrasal verbs like work out and find out, or even come up with, catch up with. Just look at these ones. Edrych ymlaen at, look forward to. Edrych ar ôl, look after. Lawr grisiau, downstairs. I fyny'r grisiau, upstairs. They're pretty much translated word for word from English. What about these other phrases? Aeth y pŵer allan. The power went out. Gwylio allan am. Watch out for. Troi i fyny. Turn up. Arwyddo fy hun i fyny. Sign myself up. Dewch ymlaen. Come on. What that means is when you're building up this new language in your head, there's much less of a mental shift, because sometimes when you learn a foreign language you have to say the same thing but in a different way, just not with ease. Why is that so? Perhaps they don't realize that this specific combination of verb and preposition to mean this abstract meaning is specific to the English language. So they take it for granted and liberally translate all that into Welsh, because of course it's going to make sense to other Welsh speakers as well. Sometimes, in my opinion, it gets a bit too far as well. For example, ofni allan, literally to fear out, but it's like to freak out, and that's a really specific phrase in English. Or this one, Tom is trying shoes on. This R is not supposed to end a sentence at all, but it's just there because it means on. And it's not just vocabulary either, because it's also about how we phrase things in general, how we put abstract ideas into words. Because unless you speak a foreign language on a high level, you don't realize that the kinds of imagery that we use to describe our reality vary a lot between languages. So whether it's because of mutual influence between the languages over the centuries, or just the influence of modern bilingual speakers, soon after I started consuming Welsh media, I quickly noticed a lot of Welsh phrases correspond directly to English ones, like dig allan o dig, 10 out of 10, put the something back in something, like put the fun back in funeral. And this email is from a Welsh publisher, so even proficient Welsh writers do use that. And other than all these widely accepted expressions, there are also many English ways of phrasing things that are technically not standard Welsh, but have been used so often that they've become part of colloquial language. For example, if you want to say, I'm delighted to do something, in Welsh you normally say, I'm happy of doing something. Dwi'n falch o wneud rhywbeth. But I commonly see dwi'n falch I wneud rhywbeth. And in Welsh, if you want to say to not do something, for example, I want you to not come, you need to insert the verb peidio, which means to not do. But often I just see people insert the word ddim, which is commonly accepted to mean not. But most notably, possession in Welsh. We are supposed to say, for example, book the boy, llyfr y bachgen. But more and more people are saying the book of the boy, a llyfr o'r bachgen. I'm not going to say if that's good or not, but the thing is, it will be understood, which makes speaking easier. And as more and more English speakers speak Welsh, there has been more fundamental changes to the language because of English influence, like the singular they, the removal of female professional titles like female bus driver, female learner, female pianist, female president, and so on. Even though most European languages that have a feminine gender would have retained these words for the sake of grammatical consistency. Again, I'm not saying if that's a good or bad thing. Hello, Editor Israel here. Somehow I've completely forgotten to mention code switching or code mixing. That means casually mixing a large number of English words into Welsh speech. This might actually be the #1 reason speaking Welsh is easy. Code mixing in Welsh is so commonplace that it's actually weird to not do it. I can confirm from personal experience. And a lot of code mix English words have proceeded to be respelt in Welsh, such as the word brain or brain, resulting in a whole new generation of word borrowings. So, sorry about that, I guess. The result of all this is that I found myself having full-on, natural, extended conversations in Welsh way earlier than I would have expected to, just a few months in. Even now, my Welsh vocabulary is way behind, like years worth of study behind my German, but I'm almost as comfortable hanging out with friends in Welsh as I am in German. Ironically, the hardest thing for me has been to decide whether to use correct grammar. As I said, there's options built into the grammar, and on top of that, it's exceedingly rare for native speakers to speak textbook Welsh the way that we were taught to speak. Like, imagine if English speakers freely switched between he speaks and he speak. Not a great analogy, but that's the best one I could come up with. Oh yeah, come up with. That's also one of the phrasal verbs that they calc into Welsh. All in all, there's many kinds of Welsh, and I'm not talking about regional dialects here. Because of the current state of the language, a lot of people speak with different registers and levels of ability. Some might have learned it in school to fluency or even university and speak proper Welsh. Others might have gone to primary school in Welsh and forgotten most of the vocabulary, hence mixing more English into their Welsh. Some might even only ever speak Welsh at home, hence using different structures or lacking technical vocabulary and so on. A lot of the speakers that I've met though were perfectly capable Welsh users when they left school and gradually lost their command of the language over the years. So when I'm speaking with them, I'm constantly thinking, if I use this technical word in Welsh, will they recognize it? Should I use the English instead? If I use this conjugation, or if I change this sound in the noun as the grammar requires, will they be lost? These are all super weird things to be thinking about when you're only 1 year into the language. But on the bright side, every conversation I've had feels like a collaborative project. Even if they are the native speaker, because the brain is split into 2 languages, they might ask you for a sometimes super easy word that has slipped their mind in the moment. One day, for example, me and my friend looked up the word for desert together, and a few days before that, someone just tripped up and asked me how to say sell in Welsh. That's kind of why it's so much fun and so addictive. If you go and study Welsh grammar and then watch Welsh TV, you'll find people making mistakes all over the place. And that's perfectly fine. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to be like, that kind of language is not fit for broadcasting standards. So what are you waiting for? Ewch a defnyddiwch Cymraeg. Oh hey, hello. You're in the outro now. Before you click away, this is a new series of videos on Welsh that tie in with my study streams and also obviously my own learning. If you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you loved my impassioned rant on Duolingo Welsh. If you want to hear more about people who speak in non-standard ways and why it's important, check out my dialect video series.